Oh, hello fellow weirdos. Always nice to see you up here in the Mask Fan Attic, where we look for interesting old Halloween masks and continue with the never-ending, eternal celebration of the art of mask and monster and creature design. One of the companies back in the late 1970s making good Halloween masks, along with Don Post Studios and Be Something Studios, was the rather short-lived Savage Eye Company, originally run by a man named Charles Curtis, who sculpted a lot of these wonderful masks. Some were movie and TV and cartoon characters, others were his own designs. The Savage Eye masks were pretty nice at first, but then the company was sold to somebody who made terrible chintzy quality copies of them, and they were still called Savage Eye. So it's hard to tell what you're getting unless you can really get a good look at it and find out if you're getting a good Savage Eye or one of the mass-produced over in Trashcanistan versions that came later. But in any event, there was no Savage Eye for many years, and Mr. Curtis was not making masks anymore until, more recent times. He sort of experienced, a bit of a renaissance mask-wise. He came back on the scene and made a few more masks, not anything like mass production certainly, but just artist pieces handmade by him, because he found out after all these years that there were people who really loved his work and collected his masks from back in the day, and that there was, a lot of interest among the mask collectors of the present day planet Earth. Now, one of those creations was this hideous abomination, just called the Zombie, just a zombie. And interestingly, it is the first, and as thus far only, the first and only Savage Eye zombie mask. Now, there was a mask back in the late 70s and early 80s from Savage Eye called Living Death that was technically sort of a zombie, that was achieved by using bones, their skull mask, and sculpting flesh onto one side of it in a scary face. So it was sort of a half skull, half corpse ghoul looking creation. But this is the first one ever to just be called Zombie. And when was this made? Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I was going to tell you anyway, because it's such an easy one to answer. Because you can see right here it says Charles Curtis 11/14, which means, which is the date of November 2014, which was when this was created. Entirely handmade by Charles Curtis, the guy who made all those masks back in the late 70s. And it even has his trademark zipper up the back. Savage Eye was sort of an innovator in that regard. They were the first company to put zippers up the backs of their latex monster masks so as to make them wearable in a way that would offer a good snug fit and would fit around the wearer's neck and back of the head without having to sculpt it extra large, so that someone could pull it on over their head. The zipper enabled them to get a tighter fit and a nice small neck to the mask. Now, this guy looks ever so much like a Charles Curtis sculpture. I think if you had showed it to me without my knowledge of who sculpted it, I think I would have guessed Charles Curtis, because it just sort of has the look of his masks. The ears, the general proportions and stylistic choices here look like Charles Curtis masks. Now, why did he make a zombie after all those years? Oddly enough, it's because his daughter was a fan of the TV show The Walking Dead, and he wanted to do one because she was saying, why don't you make a zombie like in The Walking Dead? And I don't think Charles Curtis himself was really a fan or really cared about The Walking Dead TV show. He just thought it would be cool to do a zombie because his daughter was into them, and everybody was liking zombie masks these days. So he just made this one up from scratch, and you can see here's a scratch, and here's a scratch, and down here's some scratches. So that's how you know he made it from scratch. Got the creepy tongue going off to one side and the gnarly yellow teeth. Now, the eyes aren't really part of it, they're just stuck in there with little pieces of masking tape. What other tape would you use in a mask besides masking tape, right? Those are just plastic eyes that are stuck in there. and they're not part of the sculpture or anything. And well, since Mr. Curtis stuck them in there himself, I left them there, okay? But if I wanted to wear this, like, you know, to a wedding or a funeral or something, all I would have to do would be pull those little masking taped plastic eye inserts out of there, and I'd be fine. As you can see, the zombie has some very thin, very sparse, light brown hair, and you may be interested to know that there are fewer than 20 of these. I think he made it as far as around 15, 17, somewhere in there, and that was the end. So they are out there floating around on the internet, so you may be able to score one if you're a collector of either Savage Eye masks. And wow, if you collect Savage Eye masks, this is one to beat. This is a real rarity in the world of Savage Eye masks. Or if you just collect scary, bloody zombies, you may like the Charles Curtis Savage Eye Zombie, which peculiarly didn't come along until 2014, as we know from right there. And that's all I have to say about him. So, well, until next time, if you care to continue exploring the attic with me, allow me to give you this explorer hat to wear, and maybe it will protect you from some of the dead spiders and flies and cobwebs and such over your head.